Hello and welcome to the Scream 1996 movie summary. Young Casey Becker, Drew Barrymore, is receiving calls from an unknown caller in the first scene of the movie. It initially seems as though he has the wrong number, but it quickly becomes apparent that he is playing a prank on her as his voice becomes progressively more menacing. When Casey discovers her caller can see her, she feels afraid. When the caller demands movie trivia answers in exchange for her life and the lives of her lover Steve, who she sees tied up on her back patio, she starts to worry. The caller tortures Casey after killing Steve until finally breaking in and chases her. He has a white ghost mask covering his face and is clad in a black attire. Just as her parents enter the driveway, he chases her across the lawn. Casey is stabbed in the chest while unable to scream because they cannot see her. The killer hangs Casey's body in the backyard for her parents to find after killing her. Next, we see Neve Campbell's character Sydney Prescott and her boyfriend Billy Loomis, Skeet Ulrich. Billy sneaks up to Sydney's bedroom window and makes an attempt at sex, but Sydney is hesitant and wants to keep her virginity for the time being. When Sydney's father, Neil Lawrence Hecht, enters Sydney's room to talk about his upcoming trip out of town, he nearly immediately discovers them. We learn that Sydney and her father are alone and that Sydney's mother was dead about a year before. Cotton Weary, Liev Schreiber, who claims he is innocent, was named as the murderer in Sydney's evidence. The news of the murder spreads quickly at Sydney's school the following day, and classes are briefly cancelled. Sydney decides to stay with her best friend Tatum because she is now alone and her father has passed away, Rose McGowan. Stu, Matthew Lilliard, a class clown who formerly dated Casey Becker, and Randy, Jamie Kennedy, a horror movie nut, are among the pals that sit with Sydney, Tatum, and Billy. To wait for Tatum to take her up, Sydney returns home. She answers the ringing phone and recognizes the unusual voice as the one she had just heard talking to Casey. She initially assumes it is Randy making jokes, but the caller quickly turns hostile and mentions Sydney's mother. Does Sydney want to pass away? No, for sure not your mom. In Sydney's home, the killer emerges from a closet and a chase ensues throughout the residence. Sydney locks herself in her bedroom and calls 911. When Billy finally shows up and attempts to enter via Sydney's window once more, a cell phone drops out of his pocket. Sydney rushes downstairs and out of the house after realizing it might have been him who had called, only to be met by the cops. Billy is questioned at the police station where they are both transported. Dewey, David Arquette, Tatum's older brother and the town deputy, is viewed as a fool by Sydney when they first meet at the police station. She is met by nosy reporter Gail Weathers, Courtney Cox, the author of an expose on the murder of Sydney's mother, outside the police station. Gail believes Cotton Weary was unfairly convicted, and she is currently investigating a report regarding the death of Casey Becker because she believes the two killings are related. When Tatum brings Sydney to her residence, the murderer calls again and says, "You got the wrong guy, Sydney, again." Sydney is threatened by the murderer the following day at school when she is in the restroom, but she manages to get away. The group of pals decides to hold a party now that school is out and there is a curfew in effect. In an effort to speak with Sydney, Gail Weathers brings a videographer to the party, but Dewey stops her. They converse and appear to share a soft spot for one another. When they arrive at the party, Dewey decides not to arrest the guests for drinking alcohol while underage. Billy and Sydney go upstairs during the party, where Sydney has sex with him. The attacker, who has apparently infiltrated the party, kills Tatum in the garage. Following their brief conversation, the killer enters through the door and stabs Billy in the back. Another pursuit begins. Someone stabs Dewey. Gail, driving her news van, swerves to miss Sydney and crashes into a tree and a hill, looking to be killed. Sydney finds herself in the home with Randy and Stu, who both accuse the other of being the murderer. Randy wants to go out, but Stu wants to go inside and get the gun. After shooting Randy and turning to reveal that the blood is fake, Billy was merely acting as though he had been stabbed. Billy eventually staggers down the stairs, bloodied, and lets Randy and Stu into the house. He received assistance from his companion, Stu. They jointly committed the murders. Billy also admits that he was the one who murdered Sydney's mother, who had an extramarital relationship with his father. Billy killed Mrs. Prescott as retaliation after blaming her for the breakdown of his parents' marriage. Billy and Stu also admit that they have Mr. Prescott, who is restrained in a cupboard, whom they have kidnapped. They plan to injure themselves to make it appear as though Mr. Prescott attacked them, at which time they will kill both him and Sydney. They have implicated Mr. Prescott in the killings. Billy and Stu use the knife to cut each other in the flesh, but Gail Weathers interrupts them when she comes back carrying Dewey's revolver. Gail fails to turn off the gun's safety, which leads to a battle. In retaliation for their abuse, Sidney kills Stu with a television and shoots Billy once in the head with a gun. It is shown that Randy and Dewey are still alive. Gail says that everything works out just fine after a terrifying incident at the Macker home. A summary of the movie Scream 1996 was provided. Enjoy your day and never forget to like, share, and follow.